slide. So I'm just going to skip through this reasonably quickly. I'm happy to take any questions. Some of this material has already been provided before, so it's just a recap. So everyone knows we've got lots of challenges. Next slide. We've provided some numbers. I note, Councillor Simpson, you asked a question about why, or what happens if we add in numbers such as the cost of maintaining Bennett Oval and Memorial Oval. Short answer is that makes the numbers look even.
Well, my question was really, what other sporting grounds do we support?
Yeah. So
And the answer is no.
other than currently Jubilee, Bennett, and
Yeah, but they've been excluded. You've got here costs for buildings and sporting grounds, so equivalent to blah 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 blah.
Yep.
But what sporting grounds do we support? Zero.
Well, we've got 3 sporting grounds.
Yeah, no, but they're in here saying we don't. That's not included.
Yeah.
You exclude them from that.
Yeah.
You put that in place.
Probably have to talk to the Bradford
Yes.
to get a
Okay.
level of service as well, but not
Yeah. Essentially, the purpose of this was really just to provide some high-level numbers that just show that we spend a lot in terms of particularly our buildings. Next slide. We just wanted to ground this conversation with what we discussed with Mark Searle, and what council set out to at the start of the term is, what is our why? What are we trying to achieve? Because we, and it's inherent, we often talk about the what or the how, and often don't go back to, why do we do certain things? Next slide. We got a very long list of facilities or land uses, and there's different ways that we can provide those. Again, that's not a definitive list, just to open the mind in terms of some of the things we need to address. Next slide. The infamous spaghetti bowl. Now, if we take Westlands United just as one example, grab the Westland United part of the spaghetti bowl, try to pull that out, and there's a fair bit of resistance on that piece of spaghetti because it's all tangled up with other things. So Westlands United was tangled up with things like Eddie Hughes's and the state government's $6 million election commitment for Rec and Sport, potentially Club Italico not wanting to go to Jubilee, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of inertia with something that on the face value could and should have been a simple discussion, is often not that simple. Next slide. We reflected on the last workshop. I think the next slide says it. It's a workshop that did go pear-shaped. I think it was quite clear that some councillors were frustrated with, why we're having a conversation about the what ifs when we've got stuff on, right in front of us, and there's no real context or roadmap in terms of how we work through that spaghetti bowl. So understand that fully. This is not an exhaustive, but it's just some of the things that we've been doing, sometimes behind the scenes. Just reflecting on tonight's discussion, there's, had to be added to this list is, very regular meetings that Jade's been having with SA Water around the water infrastructure piece and what that might mean. And the question and part of the commentary with planning and land use services at that local level, that notion of shifting sands, at any point in time, you think you've got a bit of a firm footing in terms of the current lay of the land, but it only takes one or two things to potentially shift to then make you realise that there's actually more that needs to be done. And the Westlands United soccer club was a really good example of that, where their lease was about to come. We met with them and said, look, this is where you're currently located. It's not the highest and best land use. We'd like to have a conversation about how we can work together to relocate you to an alternate site. Just want to make sure I don't lose Jade, because I'm going to be deferring to Jade in just a sec. You've left something behind, have you?
Yeah, I left my computer, so sorry.
I don't know.
I always lose everything. Everyone said before I left, I wonder what you're going to lose this time.
We completely changed the master plan.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you're looking after our
I
interests.
know. It's a massive worry. Isn't it?
Good job.
So, you know, if you rewind the clock, whatever it was, 9 months, 10 months ago, I should have done that before this meeting. We started a conversation with Westlands United. We had, in our own minds, you know, a path forward in terms of the conversation we had, only for that path to end up being a bit of a rocky road. To that end, I want to now sort of just jump out of this presentation. I'll come back to it. But, I'll get Jade to talk about discussions that have happened in our city as recently as last week. If you can bring up the other slides, Deck, please. And I'll hand over to Jade, who will mention very quickly, this is all confidential, subject to cabinet approval. Believe it or not. So over to you, Jade.
So we've all had the 6 million hanging over our heads for a long time now. And last week we had a really important forward movement. Always one of the things we've asked for is for the 6 million to be tested against proper costings for what was the election promise that we all knew in the Whyalla news. The best people to do that were those that build those facilities all the time. So Office of Sport and Rec took that task on and then used all their knowledge of developments in and around the state to work with RLB and cost it out. So we've been given those costings, which if the original plan here goes ahead is over $8 million, so already the budget's blown, but you'll see how they've pared it back. So just a quick recap, we've always known that the Whyalla Secondary School didn't meet the original principles of a super school, which began with the Roma Mitchell, followed by Ordinga, Paenthi, and then us. Of the 3 super schools, ours was the one that was cut off and not completed to that original philosophy, which is if you are to get the best out of the investment in a new school of a super nature and scale, the community needs to have warm and welcome access for as many of the 365 days of the year that we can engineer, rather than building fences up around schools and the sign saying you're not welcome. It was to open it up and particularly have sport and rec being the functionality of the school 7 days a week. You'll know our nominal hire fees for the elements of the school that exist now, $20 or $25, very tokenistic. But we've always known the facility was never finished in terms of the ovals, the twin soccer pitches, the football oval, lights, pitch quality and maintenance, club rooms, coaches' boxes, change room, all the things that would make it work is missing, particularly toilets, public toilets, all that jazz. So flick to the next slide, Shell. So they've actually done 2 proposals. This is stage 1, which you saw before. Stage 2 has been added on. So stage 2 hasn't been costed, but that actually includes potentially another pitch of some sort, could be hockey, and some tennis or netball courts. You'll see here is allowed for cricket nets, normally 2 soccer pitches and football. We'll go to the next one. So this is stage 1 as it's costed to the 6 million. So why it's 6 million and not the 8 million is because there's no lights on either of the football oval and the second soccer pitch. And that stage 2 element was above it on that side. They've designed this in such a way that you could replicate the change rooms and the club room facility and function room in that white box, flip it, build it again down the other end to activate the oval at a point in time if that's what we so chose to do, and then open it up to more pitch development on the other side. This is based on at Hove. It's called The Cove, Majors Road and whatever the other Adams Street. So you can actually go look at it. We'll go to the next slide. That would be if stage 2 ever came to life. And then you can see the interaction between that building and that pitch.
That's a roadway in between it, is that right, Jake?
Extended car park up to the top left. That's just vegetated walkway. I believe the shared user pathway that we've got currently, I think this is the existing stuff that's here, isn't it? Yep. So it would run through there. No. No.
It's an extension to the car park and delivery services only.
So thankfully, Terry, the project manager of the Whyalla Secondary College, he knew what the full original plan was, and the switchboard and all the services and power are there waiting to connect up. So we've saved a little bit of cash on having that. You, Tammy, would know how the importance of the switchboard.
Oh, yeah.
So that's in
No
play.
happens when they blow.
Yeah.
That's not the fire. It's not the fire.
So early days, a heads of agreement is the planned next step between the Office of Sport and Recreation and tenancies for this shared use facility, with Westlands United being the first that they would negotiate a heads of agreement with, but not single use by any stretch of the imagination. And if we all think in the room, immediately there's potential for female codes and junior soccer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it could actually be an administrative centre for many of our codes as well. In theory, wouldn't it be good if administration of multiple codes occurred in partnership with others? So not to underestimate this has been 2.5 years of slog to bring this up to this point. So it's really exciting. It really drives home for us, and I'm more than happy to share these costings. When you look at what it costs to do a development, so first off, makes no sense not to put lights here and here. When you see the cost of what it gets loaded onto this, and this is why we've got the problem we've got with all our individualized facilities. And if we keep doing individual, not hub-like developments, we pay 2, 3, 4, 5 times over for those loading costs and all those setup costs and all those consultancy fees and all the geotech, et cetera, et cetera. One really interesting part of this body of work is that the Office of Sport and Rec were able to bring turf experts to town to prepare this work, and they have picked up on what a number of you have already referenced, that the turf that was laid on the ovals was a bad choice. And so they've got the team that works on all of Adelaide's prime premier ovals are going to come in, and Office of Sport and Rec are going to pay for the seeding of the pitches as they are, to bring them up to a turf quality that will be easier to maintain, won't get that brown dyed off look that we're familiar with. So they're burning the midnight oil on delivering this. We'd like to piggyback on that whilst they're in town delivering on that turf management, to see if we can't extend them to Bennett and Jubilee as well, so we can get some learnings and get those turfs to where we want them. Questions?
Who maintains them once they're set up?
You do.
Okay. Get them all already.
Council issued scissors.
that scene in Forrest Gump where he just kills out on right on Muller.
So good.
Look, it's up in the air at the minute. Murmurings at this point in time is that the Department of Education are keen to manage this and manage the leasing, and not us. Yeah.
What's in it for them? In a non-skeptical way.
Leasing, they get to keep the money.
Oh, okay.
And really controlling the education.
Okay.
You know, it is student and children orientated.
Yeah.
Protecting those interests first and foremost.
Yeah.
I would say is the biggest motivating factor for them. That could change. So none of this is set in stone. This is all being considered.
Stage one is completely on education. It's
Yeah.
like into the TAFE land or the university land.
Yeah. Timeframes, Jay? There, I've never seen anything move so fast in all my life. They were talking about a matter of weeks getting the turf experts out. They even looked at and investigated, and I don't think they'll get this off the ground, a variation to the original contract of building the secondary school to engage Sarah Construction to deliver this. I think that time lapse will see that that is not an appropriate procurement, but that's how fast they were trying to expedite it. So they're really going hard and fast. We've had some local feedback to them not to engage DIT to project manage in any way, shape or form in order to ensure that the costs, the full 6 million, as much of the 6 million goes to getting stuff out the ground. They have approached us to consider whether we project manage the project, but right here, right now, they're still looking at doing it themselves. Part of the Westlands United arrangement and negotiation is that they move to Club Italico for a period of time until it's constructed. And that those negotiations appear to be running smoothly at this point in time. We extracted ourselves. We allowed the Office of Sport and Rec and local member to have those discussions without us present, just to allow everyone to have their insight. What we're probably more excited about in administration land is the opportunity this provides us to apply for the female orientated grant monies that are coming in soccer and football. Both grant rounds are going to come out with a female dedicated. In theory, we'd love to finish this off with lights and whatever those things are. And the oval and potentially the flipping of and doubling up of the
And those early conversations we had a couple of years ago, we started with Principal Richmond.
yes.
She,
Wonder if she's still got those dollars in
yeah,
there.
no, she did say they had some money on the table that they could put on the table to contribute to lights and other things. And she was almost elated when we talked 2 years ago about this concept about finishing this school, the connection to community and back to sport and rec and safety and engagement and activation, all of those lovely things. She was so excited to think that we could in some way, maybe pull this off, but that was 2 years ago. And the same similar sort of excitement is still there for her. So I think that's a really positive, partnership to have. Yeah.
And Jane's right, the Adams Road, Majors Road facility in Adelaide, I drive past it all the time. Kate lives around the corner, it is fantastic.
Yeah. So that's this, they stole this exact same design, architectural plans to save money.
For the soccer, yeah.
So this is highly
That's better than
likely that this is going
Yeah.
in.
So can just on
They
that,
almost guarantee.
yeah. So just on that, if I can make sure I've got everyone's attention, what we're sharing with you tonight is highly sensitive and it is confidential in the context that whilst a lot of discussions are happening, ultimately this has to go to a cabinet subcommittee to be approved. We understand that the report has already been written and that committee meeting is only a week or two away. However, having said that, our experience is sometimes cabinet subcommittee meetings, and Mayor's had this experience with trying to get on the agenda, can sometimes sort of slip or blow out. But the reason that's important is what's effectively is a change to an election commitment. And the state government will want to have its thumbprints all over the messaging associated with a change to an election commitment. And the reason why things are happening sort of at light speed when it comes to state government processes at present is because this hangs off the back of that election commitment. So please keep this to yourself tonight. We don't want, you know, at the potentially the 11th hour for us to stumble over something. Education, the school board has to sign off on this in terms of potential governance responsibilities for the change and function room facilities and coaching facilities. Westlands United need to sign up. Part of the arrangement is for them to vacate their current site by October this year. That links back ultimately to the hydrogen jobs plan and to the need to provide houses, which we've talked about before. So Office of Hydrogen Power have been supportive in terms of facilitating some of these conversations. So there's lots and lots of people with fingerprints over this. And we just want to make sure that the cake actually gets baked before we start, you know, with knife and fork and enjoying the product of a lot of labour to get us to this point. Anything else to add, Jade, in terms of this?
No, other than I think you'll find the messaging around it and how it's executed will evolve. I just to throw it out there, I'm worried as to how other soccer clubs are going to receive this that are in the city.
Why worry about that?
Oh,
They're all quite well gentlemen.
Pretty well. The clubs are pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think it'd be too much.
I don't think it'd be too much jealousy involved.
that's great. That's great.
I've got two questions though. First one, being on education land and soccer clubs like to have their liquor licenses, is that going to be a problem? Or is there exemptions?
It's not true.
We're just not talking about it at the moment.
I'll add plus one to that.
School.
The traditional, emphasise the traditional business model for a lot of sporting clubs was that they needed gate takings and they needed drinks across the bar to help pay their way.
Yeah.
This type of facility doesn't lend itself to that traditional business model. So there's going to have to be some changes to custom practice in terms of how some of the users of this space actually generate income and how they contribute to paying their way in terms of access of facilities. So not an easy
So that's a massive point, isn't it? Well, that's a huge point.
Well, that is, and as I said, we don't want to rattle the cage just yet.
No,
We just want to,
just something I was thinking of.
yeah, no, and it's a really good point, and we've been raising those sorts of issues for some time now with both our local state member and state government agencies, and we've got to give real credit to Department of Rec and Sport to that have come to the party. They you know, they've had some hard discussions with various stakeholders. What they've co-created here is that's the outcome for the city if we can just get it to land. You know, the 6/8, can you just remind us what the difference is between what we get for 6 million and what we could if we had 8 mil? What's the difference?
Pretty much lights and finishing off of activating the other two pitches, the oval and the pitch.
Yeah.
But I think what's been successful, Office of Sport and Rec, and it's our job for the Connected and Active Communities position here. The codes that understand it is how you engage with youth and families and how you change the model of your old drinking at the club. How you adapt and change to that is how you grow your code. And one of the models that they've used here, which is the code, is exactly that. How are we appealing to young children? And it may come up later in the night, but that's where cricket's got into a pickle. That's where we're all falling away. It's where clubs that aren't as thriving as they once were. It's because they don't know how to do it, do a model that engages with young families and how they work now. And when you do improve in that space, you improve your membership, you improve everything about your club. And these add-ons to these secondary schools have proven that. the little, what are they called? Is it football or whatever, the little pitch, futsal, those things. And yeah, so
What's the longest standing example that you can think of where that's happened? And I guess the reason I ask the question is like the cultural shift away from an alcohol-based club to a non-alcohol-based club.
yeah, look, one of the examples we talked to Office of Sport and Rec about is, this is a tiny little lame example, but it's a bit fun. Merchandising, parents will happily pay for their children's name on the back of the jumper or the Guernsey, and making that merchandise retailing at the club available from the club, and getting those activations around game day around food and drink provisions. And healthier options for the kids, but also the little mini game versions of the sport, and being able to walk from the school to the code. Sorry, I should have said that first. It's the single biggest contributing factor to getting increased sign up to the code, is the child being able to walk from school straight to the facility. And participate in it, and not have to have that transport factor.
And shutting down the alcohol part of it, I can actually, I've got an example there, and I know it's not apples and oranges, but when we shut down the beer booth at the show, we had 5 really angry people come at us, but then we were able to market it as a family-friendly event. There is no drunk people walking around, there is no fights. Because of that, our patronage went up.
Wow. That's so good to hear.
Yeah. So we might draw this conversation.
Can I just ask one more question?
Yeah. No, if you got more questions.
Yep, just one more. When you said moving junior soccer, like this is the grand plan, and then you said about consultants looking at Jubilee Park, is that just like, are we throwing money at something that's not going to be?
The big missing unknown.
Don't want to have another Bennett Oval where we're putting millions of dollars into something that's selected.
Mention Jubilee just for the turf factor, and getting we're also struggling with turf at Bennett. It's not performing. So I just mentioned that in turf. But the big missing piece you would have heard from Plus is the role and function of Jubilee to that workers camp in that sport and rec space. And so that was a big unknown for us, dealing in the sport and rec space. Is there appeared to be this and Jubilee on the horizon for extra added investment, and we weren't sure which way it would lean. The community survey results for Jubilee's workforce village, and I can't remember the name, so I want to call it the solar farm, but yeah, that's it. Was pretty damning. The community didn't want investment in those sport and rec facilities via that community survey, so that really switched Hydrogen's mind. This isn't even if this was to, this won't solve everything. Stage 2, possibly, we're in a realm. If you look at all our previous master plans from 2009, 2014, they all identified that Bennett and Memorial needed spillover because they were so singularly orientated facilities. You know, they didn't have enough add-ons and hub-like qualities. Memorial doesn't at all. Bennett has a little bit. That there was always going to be a need. So this is probably the truest form of hub development we've ever had in our city. And it would be awesome to see, I think, to see hockey, netball, and a real energy. The Cove has a BMX track, a really pumping, funky BMX component
Not
as
in
well.
the facilities across the road and down the road a bit further.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably a couple of k's away, but it's all in that general area.
Yeah. Yeah.
Question, it's not going to be money that's going to be wasted.
No.
It's definitely something that
I think, something that's netball have been self-sufficient and known in life for a really long time, and they've said that they're not joining any of these hubs forever and a day. In the last 18 months, we've got them to transition to say, absolutely, you know, the memberships, the people who are managing these things are getting older. You know, the younger people are busier. So all of that voluntary stuff is starting to wane in every sport, and they've indicated that if they're able to use the gymnasium there and you give them some outdoor courts, they'll shuffle too, which is great, because then the benefit of that means that the courts then become housing.
Yeah, oh, the old court
Infield rather than spread.
Yeah.
So, and the services are a stone's throw away, because netball is just there.
Yeah.
They move more housing.
This is really massive.
It is. It is.
Yeah. Unlocks so much, and it's scalable.
Yeah. The other
Dave has
thing,
had to beat up a lot of people to do it.
Next time you need help, Jade, we're all up for it.
I'd love to work out how we can get access to the signature from the state, from the cabinet subcommittee, because you know, that is the key decision. So we're a little way from that. But just adding to the conversation, women's sport, and back to the question about Jubilee and where do we put our money. The emerging junior women's sport opportunity, not just in the AFL but across the codes, is huge. And if you think about what would happen if netball happened to co-locate into this space, and those, I really want to emphasise that those change room and club facilities will be multi-user, and will certainly be female friendly. That's now a given with all of the contemporary builds that Rec and Sport are managing. You know, this area could potentially also become the epicenter of women's sport across multiple codes as well. So really exciting. The other thing which sort of deflection from here is what this also does is potentially unlocks the Westlands United Soccer Club land for alternate purposes, which we talked about. So we might actually end up with two birds in hand as opposed to one, which is absolutely massive.
Yeah, that is.
And also, do you want me to put my presentation up?
You can do,
Yeah, it speaks to the rest of the central precinct.
So if you can bring up.
Can I have one question? Not on that site, but connected to it. If Discovery Parks buy the land where Westlands currently are, do they have, I presume their intention is cabins and parking spaces, caravans and motorhomes, but is there any intention to do anything about a water park?
So stage 2 was the Westlands United site. And the preliminary concepts that we saw was the water park being the central and lagoon pool.
Were you here, David, the night that they come to present?
The Marion.
I was wondering why you asked that question, because when they come to present, it was very clear that that is their planned investment. If that soccer club was unlocked 18 months ago, they could have potentially been building 240 executive type not apartments, executive type cabins, still cabins like apartments. But they are committed to the point where we were due to actually host the Discovery Board and their investment partners in Whyalla next week. They've had a change of plan, so they can't come, but the same funding body is also the financiers for one of the major proponents working with the state government on the hydrogen projects. So some of the board members are actually coming to Whyalla, but for a different purpose. But we can actually talk to them about that whilst they're here. So we've seen the concept plans. We haven't got anything per se from Discovery that says, if they get access to the land, they will build it, within 12 months or 2 years or something to that effect. That would be part of the contract for sale negotiations. And I think the stars are starting to align. And I'm hoping that conversations will recommence with Discovery very soon about what they could do with that land if it becomes available in the not too distant future. Jade's going to continue. put a spotlight on Rec and Sport, which is sort of in that central precinct. We'll just open that up a little bit more, noting that next week we will be having Colin Steele from Studio 51 come and work with the elected member group what we put through to the federal government in terms of a regional precinct and partnership. So tonight was citywide. Next week is precincts, particularly the central precinct, if council support us focusing on that in terms of what we put up to the feds. And I'll hand back to Jade now that the AV is ready in terms of the presentation that was done to the elected CEOs and I found a couple of weeks ago.
So we wanted to reflect on both the state government's effort, our effort and our collective effort since we last met the CEOs. So we'll go next slide. They were just about to go do the cuttlefish tours out at Stony Point. So we thought we'd give them a report card on what we thought of them and ourselves. And I think it went down pretty well. So sorry, who done my husband? Let me tell him the house keys in my car in a little nook next to the steering wheel. Obviously, this is the big, sexy project that the state has spent all its effort on marketing to our community and the rest of the state, but by and large to our community. And that's triggered some tangible propositions for Cloden, and that's probably the most physical thing that this community could see was going to happen outside of the State Prosperity Project and the power station. We're continuing to work with Renewal on this actually seeing the light of day. Development approval has been given to GFD. They did a lot of groundwork and they're ready to go as soon as they're ready. So we wanted to acknowledge to the state government that this is important to us. Next one. The village I forgot the name of and couldn't pronounce. Also another very highly tangible thing for our community to grasp. Again, those survey results were very telling though. And this, I believe through many of the conversations we've had, it was once this proposition became tangible to this community and was being costed. Okay. I think this is probably what triggered the 6 million going towards the Whyalla Secondary School, believe it or not. Once the notion of a rolling in and rolling out again village to this community really sat, I think, at the highest levels of state government, that didn't feel good. Once they started to cost the service provision of power and water to this village, all that previous talk of underwriting existing accommodation providers in this town all of a sudden took on a whole new life once you actually did the dollar figures. And even though we screamed for 2 years that if you know anything about economic development, if you don't have power and water, he can't come in. He can't come in. It's not confidential. I think this was a blessing for us in lots of other ways. So next one. Councillor Knox, this is exactly what you were referring to. Stage 1, do they have that stage 2? So stage 2 is that, but with the lagoon, swimming pool and the water park smack bang in the centre, also with it being open to members of this community to access. For us, this was always, in the end, I'll talk you through we left them with 8 things we dream about every night in city activation and community development. Beyond power stations, beyond northern water pipelines and all those things, and our airport and the need for our passenger numbers, no matter what happens, our passenger numbers need to go up or none of the investment we've made in that airport makes sense. The things that will do that is having a resort standard caravan park, because there's nothing on Eyre Peninsula. There's none of that. That just means we're not viable in that space. I was actually excited to see that Discovery had taken on Wilpena. We know the relationship, you know the relationship as locals that we have between the Flinders Ranges. That will game change for us as well. So this, we emphasise to those CEOs how absolutely meaningful this development to go ahead, because we can have that sexy sporting facility at the Whyalla Secondary School. We can have all those things. But right now, if we have a country championship of any code, it feeds elsewhere. It doesn't return the investment back to us. And you've seen the dollar figures it takes to get the SANFL here, Nord Games, all the rest of it. Doesn't add up. So this game changes for almost every facet of the projects that we're talking about. Next one. Nicholson is what reaches out the most to people passing through our city. 9 times out of 10, they will go to KFC and they will go to Macca's. So it is Nicholson that they will use to transfer the city. Some will fly through to Playford, but for many, they come through. The more contemporary we look on that strip, so we've got the beautiful Whyalla Secondary School, we'll have a modern ambulance station and fire station. And ideally on this particular site, further along and then behind it will be a contemporary housing development that will look very much like Lightsview and all those ones we observe in Adelaide. Our ability to have that housing development, have a water sensitive urban design piece is striking. It's written into our stormwater management plan that is the problem with our city. So we could all of a sudden have that aged care, over 50s lifestyle component on the foreshore and in the heart of this city that offers that real competitive piece to living in Adelaide. I want to tell you all that I know, but I potentially will be killed.
Okay.
That will ruin everything.
Counterproductive.
But we have been meeting with SA Water quietly every 2.5 months for 2.5 years to chip away at the service provision issues that this city faces. For me personally, it's the biggest inhibitor to growth in this city. Forget everything else, forget all the bells and whistles and the bloody beer runners in the pub spruiking hydrogen. If we don't have water utility provision and power utility provision where we need it, you're dead in the water. So we have been given a preliminary indication that there is likely to be a 4 to 5 year program of works coming very soon, and SA Water will come and workshop these with you that address our horrendous pinch points in this city and change the flow rates and stop the development needs. So Jodie and her team have had one very recently, and that company may have already spoken to some of you, where they missed out by 2 litres a second on meeting the mandatory flow rate tests, which potentially means the augmentation, like we've all seen out at basketball and would stop any development going forward in this city. No one can afford. Our childcare centre redevelopment had a $250,000 bill to separate the mains provision to that. We've managed to alter that and change that through some pretty strong negotiations. But if you add on those costs to that loading cost of construction, we're dead in the water, and it doesn't matter how many fancy master plans we have. So this body of work has gone really well, and I wanted to let every CEO in that room know that although SA Water are a bit of a punching bag, we seem to have got some traction, particularly through actually the UPLGA's paper submission we contributed to get into that investigation. So, next one.
Needs homework, Jane.
We thank the CEOs for doing this. Now that Plus isn't here, they haven't left anything else behind.
Not online.
It was a bit rough, and Oricon refused to come to Whyalla, and we were wanting to not just regurgitate what we already had. I'm happy with where it's landed, but it took a lot. But politics first. We thank them profusely. And we do genuinely mean that. If you actually look at Whyalla in the context of this state, not everyone has 6 million to play with. Not everyone has a hydrogen power station. Not everyone's got a state prosperity project. Not everyone's got a green iron project. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves we are bloody lucky and we've got these big things to grow us. There are neighbouring councils that aren't in that, and I think of Port Augusta. So thank them. Next. And then we said, so you think you're good? Well, watch us. And I didn't do it justice, but we talked about the community plan, the flourishing Whyalla, the sense that this community's got of what's coming and how they want to prepare themselves for it, and that they took the ownership to do it and how they really, really want to push this city forward. So I think that was referenced tonight by Plus in putting together the master plan. They acknowledged how proactive we are, and which is really different to us from the past. So we kicked off with that. We said, which one of yous gets to go to the governor's house? And that was palpable in the room. A lot of people had never seen anything like it, and not really understood. And it really put Whyalla on a different platform. And we almost said, don't mess with us because we've got the governor in our pocket. Yeah. Next one. We've reached deeply into our very already stretched pockets and have invested in our childcare centre. And this has been a slog, and we can debrief this another day. And I deep dived into it today, and it really, I know there's the workforce tactic thing that you're in the next few days, and maybe I should go along in the rage state I'm in as to how we are completely not ready construction industry wise. But that's not the message I gave the CEOs. I said we've got very nothing in the tank, and yet we reached in because we know that childcare is going to be one of the most important things. Next slide. We drove home to the CEOs that we're not second rate. We're dead set serious about competing properly in the tourism business on the international market with the people that come to see the cuttlefish, and we want to be elegant and we want to preserve state heritage, and we really set that strong message that Whyalla is stunning because of its heritage, but it hasn't been invested in. And we said, so we've shown you how high a standard we have and how much we treasure our heritage. And by no means is this project finished, but what we've delivered and what benchmark we've set for how we want to promote ourselves. And we purposely stopped using South Aussie with Cozzy. We started using Adelaide, and we want a different market and we want to reach out to that. And we told them how elegant we are, and that's all we're interested in negotiating. Next few slides. And then we followed it up with this, which obviously hits the state government square between the eyes. Again, no one was doing anything about this site. It was completely unprepared for what was happening. You all made that most critical decision that night to proceed with these preliminary works for this season. And we don't have the video footage, or maybe we do, but the effort we did this season to ensure a much safer operation should never be underestimated. And that's a thank you to you all for going out on a limb that night and making sure we redirected what limited resources we had and combined those projects of the Northern Coastline to deliver this. Obviously, we still had more people than we could ever cope with, and we still had plenty of people parking on the vegetation, and we still have all the on-water issues. But for doing something when we were faced with incredible risk, we should hold ourselves up high. And what this storytelling did in that CEO meeting was sort of to put a lot of the CEOs' heads down a little bit in shame because it was all led by council. It was coordinated by council. It was paid for by council and therefore the ratepayer. We actually wrote their grant application for the heritage grant that they got, and they haven't spent and they don't know how to spend it, and they're thinking about scientific monitoring, and we drove it home. It's not time for scientific monitoring. It's time to make sure this site evolves properly. Next one. Again, the leisure centre, we ensured that they knew the kind of expenditure that's required just to renew facilities of that nature, and also to start to now bring them back into the central precinct of Whyalla and start to talk to them about how important that is. Again, all about the new look for us, the contemporary regional nature. We've led the way for the Eyre Peninsula branding in wild air. We've made sure it's starting to appear on all our collateral. We really want to belong to a region. We want the foreshore to be activated. We want a new look. We want to reference our history. And we've done insane things with merchandising this season. I hope the expenditure will reveal itself for the hard slog that the team's done to capitalise on our industry. Next one, Shell. And by taking the state government's work, showing what we can do for the public realm and the structure of this city, I believe those two combined working together has made the market respond, or as the mayor calls it, we're being belted. Let's go. We haven't seen contemporary residential apartment development since
Ever.
when was Mornington built?
Oh, geez, 50s.
1950s, there you go. So these,
Well, the last townhouses would have been up on Flinders Lookout.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
12.
Yeah.
So they're the last ones, so we've had
Yeah.
like that.
yeah. So that got, what was so funny is I got excited beyond belief, and Jody and Travis. Jody and Lucas started like picking on them for what they hadn't quite nailed and use of the laneways, and I gave Jody and Lucas a nice clank.
And then we showed you better ones.
And then
okay.
then they ripped this out. Next one.
That's the one you love.
That's the one I love. I know I'm overemphasizing it, and it won't mean this is game changing. These two developments are game changing. This shows you this is nothing to do with anything we've done, nothing to do with anything renewals done. This is the market responding. This is people deciding, developers with their nous, where things should go in this city and what kind of development is going to work. And the activity centre zones that they've chosen is interesting. If you've ever worked in economic development, this is your end game, the market doing stuff, not you doing anything. So we are being belted, Lucas and Jody, every day, and the building team. The Sunrise Christian School, very contemporary new development, also in the childcare space and education space. Really, really critical to see that that's being responded to in the market. I think, is it 2 childcare centres? Yep. Next slide, Shell. There you go. So they're housing, childcare, and we haven't done anything. That's the market. So keep going. And beautifully tied into that is that aged care piece, which we're really glad you raised, Councillor Knox, with Plus, because we have multiple occasions and it's not quite landed, but having it come from you too would be very helpful.
I don't think it's been shared yet how far the aged care business is going. They're actually looking at expanding on their site. They had some approvals. Sorry, Jade.
No, please.
They had some over 55 single story semi-detached residents approved a few years ago, just facing Newton Street. There we go. They've now shelved those, and it's looking like townhouse type accommodation, executive type accommodation for their employees. They can't get
employees to come and live in the city because the accommodation offerings aren't that great. The good stuff's already gone. They're looking at 2 and 3 story high rise, over 55s, every room full of the ocean, car parking underneath, and some single story over 55s, childcare and community facilities. It's a massive spend, but they've got Stellard Meek and Flight Park. Do the next one.
I know this doesn't excite you guys, but it really excites me because of the day Jodie and I went to try and find packers, which are the things you fill gaps with, and we couldn't. This is First Fix plumbing. And I can't tell you how important First Fix is to this city. And I can now own even worse now that I know the intricacies of the childcare centre construction work and the delays and how we are so limited in our supplies, how crucial this is going to be, even to just the person like me back in 2016 when I'm looking to buy a house either here or in Port Lincoln, and everybody house I looked at here had an old bathroom and toilet, and he'd been put through enough bathroom and toilet renos. We weren't interested. Next, Air Eye Centre, again, our arterial, beautiful new contemporary look, which is really exciting. That was also exciting because it brought another builder to town. Next one.
Just on to say, is that
No.
just on the I one?
Yeah.
Is that a completely private development? Or did council have any input into that to make it? Because I thought it looks fantastic driving past it. So that's all on their own. They just thought we're going to make a really big statement.
There's enough blind people here in this community.
And yet they've made it look so good.
I personally hate the porthole. Jodie thinks it's great.
I thought it was perfect. Yeah, it's an eye thing.
Maybe because I read the policy.
Presenting the eye.
Yes, it is.
Shipbuilding is history.
The planners told me that this was a bottle I drove past the other day and said, no, must be our new gymnastics stadium. It is massive. But I hope that's the trigger point for that Spencer Hotel development and the Bayview. I really hope we drink enough to trigger.
You can only buy 2 items.
I think with the lack of alcohol in the sporting facility, it may well funnel the alcohols over here.
We even had another example last week of where we've seen the state government is not talking to each other and has no concept of what these precinct partnerships grants need you to be like, need you to think like. We can talk about that later. Anyway, next one. The civic precinct. We really do need to have a sense of you've reached the destination in Whyalla, you're in the heart of Whyalla, you're in its guts, and that is in and around this precinct. The Middleback Arts, Tammy would know, it's probably 15 years in the making, it's a renewal piece. Yeah. We are pushing all who will listen to make it more than the renewal of the Middleback Arts Theatre and to consider what other things might go in this hub. So much like we think of the sport precinct, what else could be in here? Could it be us? Could it be a cultural centre for Bungalow? Could it be a migrant resource centre for new people who arrive in town that don't have English as a first language? Could it be another service centre of some description for the community? Could it be the curated storytelling piece of Tandera? What could it be? And it should be more than just the renewal of a theatre and a gallery. We think we landed that with the CEOs that day. Go to the next slide because I can't remember what more images. Before we go to the foreshore, the reason why we want to have that civic precinct really honed in is the precinct's partnership funding for the federal government requires you to have partners. It's got to be for more than one purpose. So when Country Arts SA thought last week they could submit the architectural plans of the renewal of the theatre and win a precinct's partnership grant, of up to 50 million. They are not. There's no partner involved. It's not groundbreaking in any way. So we had to gently talk them down. But it is our collective hope that every day I watch those kids leave the Whyalla Secondary School and disappear. I don't want them to disappear. I want something for them to go to and to stay behind, and for the mums and dads and carers and other members of the community to come and gather in a certain space. And so if that energy centre from the secondary school to its rear, when the kids and I finish the pageant that day and we tread that shared user pathway from KFC to where I goddamn parked, it was clear to me that that shared use pathway through the heart of our city is what we should be activating, and this does it. So imagine if we had that middle back arts precinct, the leisure centre precinct, the secondary school, sport and rec, the childcare facility, all there for the hours, 2.5 hours after that sort of school period. That should just be a buzzing, energetic space with more cafes and more activation. And then when we connect it to that foreshore piece, again with that same plus, I'm glad that they emphasised that spine that we drove home to them to get to our two gutsy places. Just do the next slide, Shell, to see where I go, because you guys have seen this, the CEOs hadn't. Next one. Cuttlefish. Yep. So now, one of the criticisms we received when we last had the CEOs was that we didn't seem to know what we wanted, and we hadn't articulated that clearly enough. So through this presentation, we emphasised that the Whyalla airport runways need to be upgraded for larger aircraft, and we had that number one. We needed a professional, affordable and social housing development underpinned with open space developments based on water sensitive urban design. And we think that's where the government could underwrite the development. So all the open space components and the water sensitive urban design components could be jointly paid for by government. And I think that would be the trigger point for getting some of those developers like Hickenbotham and the other one who've point blank refused to come to Whyalla, listening and looking at us. The Whyalla Secondary College is completed to include the original sport and recreation facilities, and we activate those unfinished assets. Importantly, the student accommodation around the university is given at least 10 new apartments for doctors. We know that doing a full medical degree in region changes the game for those doctors who then will not, and I don't want all 10 of those bloody doctors here. I want them shared to the region. The Middleburg Arts Centre's redevelopment into a hub with all those things we mentioned before. The foreshore critically has an aged care and childcare development potentially, because that puts us on the map. If you've got an aged care facility looking out over that magnificent turquoise water. We have a destination resort caravan park with a water park and a swimming pool, a community sport and recreation operated function and cafe building, so that's our surf lifesaving, the adventure play park, a BDAC cultural sculpture recognising their determination area, the heritage and preservation of Hummock Hill and a revitalised boat ramp and marina. The Cuttlefish Coast is developed to provide road and visitor infrastructure that protects Aboriginal geological and natural heritage from False Bay through to Douglas Bay North, so not just that section. And the Whyalla Foreshore Land and Heritage Cultural Precinct of the old Main Street is revitalised through that market reaction to the Bay News redevelopment. And then we could do Tandera from there. So that's 8 things that we clearly articulated to them, and they couldn't leave the room without learning those 8 things. Skip. Build us a ramp. That's it.
Mic drop.
That's just about it, is it?
That is, yeah.
So I thought it was useful for the elected members to hear that, because it does really quickly reflect on what's actually happened, and it's easy to sort of lose sight of what we've achieved, both parties. But opening up that what if question about what could we do together. And this is then the prelude to the discussion that we'll have next week around what do we submit to the federal government for the regional precincts and partnerships proposal. Jade sort of has mentioned some of the potential users and partners that may be factored into that conversation. That's really next week, is to get elected members' input views about whether that's where we focus our attention. There are two buckets of money at the federal government level that councils can access. One is growing regions and one is regional precincts and partnerships. Our current thinking and views, but we're getting some advice, good advice from a consultant that we've engaged, who's actually Canberra based and very connected with a number of these government programs, is that the foreshore precinct probably lends itself more to that growing regions. It's something that's more likely to be something that council drives and will be the sort of main player, whereas the central precincts could potentially be the focus of that regional precinct and partnership. Because if you think about it very quickly, as Jason mentioned, TAFE SA, University, Rec and Sport, Bungalow, Migration Resource Centre, Council, who have I missed, up to 6, so there's got to be another couple, depending on where we do the dotted line, maybe AMBOs and Fireys. Housing has to come into the mix somewhere in the equation. So, very quickly you can see that there are multiple stakeholders or government agencies that we can show with the feds that we've got a solid engagement with and working in partnership. But that hopefully just sort of opens your mind up ready for the discussion we have next week. Any questions of Jade?
Just a comment, which is well done. It sounds like you've wrapped everything up and just smacked it out of the ballpark.
Yeah. So just going back to the front end in terms of the setup. So super busy, lots and lots of things on the boil, shifting sands. So when we started talking about Westlands, things are very different now to when we started. Next. Taking stock of the feedback of the last workshop, didn't quite go to plan. There's obviously so many moving parts here, and we reflected on that as an administration and accepted that there's not a great deal of clarity. We'd love to be able to put things in more black and white terms, but hopefully some of the conversations tonight, you will see that it's not as simple as sometimes it appears to be. But importantly, we've got to try work with the elected member group and provide sufficient context and a roadmap to enable us to navigate and shape together the path we're on. Next slide. So remembering that this was meant to be happening last week, so tonight we have the overarching discussion about where are we trying to go, what's the roadmap. Tonight we have the citywide master plan. Next week, precincts. The week after, we'll then have Ben and Coop talking about what does that mean for our former Darling Terrace site and Ekblom vacant land. Both consultants, when we went out and got expressions of interest to engage someone to help us look at the development opportunities and to take those development opportunities to market, both of them said council really needs to work out where he wants to be, because that will very much influence how those potential sites are taken to market. Go to the market with 2 sites and say that councils have to be on either of those 2 sites. You're already starting on the back foot because there's ambiguity in terms of how the market might respond. If next week there's general support for this notion of trying to work with Country Arts SA, Jade sort of mentions that it appears that the Country Arts SA and the Minister are now starting to work out how they can free up some dollars to make that development, but we want to look at the opportunity of a broader development that includes other users. If we land there, what does that mean for those other two sites? So that will help shape that. And then off the back of those, we'll then look at a discussion regarding community facilities. Next slide. Talk about, what's the end game look like? We want to take that spaghetti bowl that is really messy. That's how you make spaghetti.
You only just realised that.
Yeah, so that's straight spaghetti. Just add water and everything goes straight to mayhem. Simple graphic on the right, but really, really complicated in that there's all of these pieces of the puzzle hang or talk to each other. And councillors quite often ask the question about why is it that we've got so many leases that have expired? Why is that? Part of the issue, and not intentionally, but now that I'm looking at the graphic, the area that we've done the least work, but the one that is probably the hottest for us in terms of helping us to work through what do we do with the leases is around that fees and charges. And we really do need to have a conversation with elected members about how we start to look at users paying a fair and reasonable contribution to the use of the site, and how do we incentivize shared use facilities as opposed to what we've had in the past.
Can I ask a really quick question there, Justin? Just like we've done with the cottages, is there any kind of capability in that area to outsource something? Is there any benefit? Is that the done thing across any other local government area?
We will need to get some external advice to work through fees and charges.
We're releasing a tender tomorrow, a request for proposals to get exactly that on the fees and charges.
Anyway,
thank you.
simple graphic, but there's a lot of work. When we regroup with the elected members in a few weeks' time, what we'll do is we'll start to map out how much work and what's the time frame, because it's easy to look at a graphic and say we've got to do some work, but we need to really add some meat to the bone in terms of, well, what does that actually mean in terms of time frame and the like. Next slide. Sorry, just trying to skip through this reasonably quickly. Some of the end game, when councillors think about, well, what are the decisions that you ultimately need to make? That's a list. And again, it's probably not a definitive list, but you as the key decision makers for our city will need to endorse the master plan at some stage. You will need to endorse what we put to the feds in terms of regional precincts and partnerships. You will need to determine what is the future use for Darling Terrace and Neckblom Street. You will in time need to adopt a community land management plan and community facility strategy that actually provides the framework for how we provide community facilities, on what terms, what are the fees and charges, et cetera, and then through the mix, look at where those facilities should be. And again, we'll get into some of that in in due course. Next slide. I was going to skip through this quickly, but the purpose of this slide was just very much talking about there's a hierarchy of planning and documents. Next slide. There's also a little bit of confusion or ambiguity in terms of the language. So we do need to get some common terminology so that when we talk about something that is regionally significant or is significant citywide, what are the facilities are we looking at? And you look at that second level down, the Planning and Development Act talks about suburban activity centre. We could potentially call those districts sitting at above or precinct level. Question is, how many citywide community facilities do you want to have in the city? And if we've got potentially 3 districts, foreshore end, centre part of town and western end of town, what does that mean in terms of the type and nature of facilities that we have? But we'll get into that in due course and work through that with the elected member group. Next slide. Again, rehash, how do we determine public value? How do we determine service levels? What are the principles we apply? That will be captured in the community facility strategy. Next slide. Importantly, what are the next steps? So we've got these targeted workshops. Then we'll regroup and talk about the community facilities in a couple of weeks' time after we've had those discussions. In the meantime, administration will start to do more work around some of the key elements that need to be featured in the community facility strategy and start working out something to put in front of council. So we're not starting with a blank piece of paper. Next slide. And that's the end. So really that was just trying to quickly say, understand that we're partway through a journey. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of uncertainty. We are going to try put some structure to how we work through that, but note that sometimes, you know, with things that are changing, State Prosperity Project didn't exist when the CEOs last come to town. Is now a thing, and yeah, things will change and we need to adapt and respond to that. So I'll press pause. Any questions on that subject? Otherwise, I'm going to open up for any just general other questions and answers.
Australia Day.
Australia Day? Yep. So,
I'm gonna have to go.
yeah. Thanks, David. All right. So if everyone's
Yeah.
generally comfortable with that information, we'll move on to the second agenda item tonight, which is Australia Day. As the briefing note says, I don't know, Michelle, you can bring that up quickly. With the council resolution being lost at the last meeting, there's been some questions asked about, well, what does that mean in terms of us defaulting back to standard or custom practice? As the covering page in the agenda says, we don't probably have good long-standing customer practice in terms of the location of the event. That was there was some changes triggered by COVID in particular. So we now need to say, with COVID largely behind us, certainly in terms of physical or social distancing restrictions or requirements, do we want to change the current arrangements which are in place, which is that we have the more formal elements of our Australia Day happening indoors in the council chamber as opposed to outdoors as it used to be? And the other question is the timing of the activities. Custom practice is that we've always had all of the activities on Australia Day. This year was an exception, which was to a decision that council resolved to do last year, that we would do something different this year, which was to have the formalities before Australia Day, then a report to come to council in terms of where to from here, which is the report that went up to the last meeting, with ultimately came to councillors decided to not accept the recommendations that were put forward. So that's the preamble, and I'm happy to open up now to have a discussion about what do councillors think should be custom practice.
Can I correct you on one thing? Before COVID, it was actually a normal practice to have the ceremony the day before. For about 16 years before COVID. So that was actually council's normal practice. I've received.
Respectfully, that's not correct. We've went back and looked at previous years.
Yeah.
Certainly the last 5 years, and except for this year, all of the activities have happened.
I've actually received them. I've received 5 Australia Day awards myself. Every single one of them, apart from the last one that I received, was not done on that day.
For what period of time are you talking about?
16 years ago, I think I got my first one.
Yeah. Well, we looked at the last 5 or 6 years, and the last 5 or 6 years, they've all been Australia Day.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. I'm saying our history before COVID, and to me, that's more of a long term.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the view? So we got the 2 issues there. One is regarding the timing. What if we start with that? So the question is, where we've sort of landed is that all of the activities will happen on the 26th. So that's by virtue of the motion being lost. We're back to what has been custom practice over the last 5 or 6 years, which is that everything was done on Australia Day. Is that where councillors wanted to land or not? Because if that's not where the councillors want us to land, we then need to work through and work out what we need to do to land where councillors want to land.
Would urge. I mean, I'm only one person, but my opinion is I think we need to rethink this. From an Indigenous perspective, but also I'll speak to the awards side of it and also the citizenship side of it as well. Receiving something on that day when it holds such a stigma, when you have served your community and you've earned that award, takes the shine off it for people that are supportive for the Indigenous community on that day. Not just Aboriginal people, but also supporters as well. I know I've had a couple of people that actually looked at that recording, and you'll probably get a few letters. One of them was from a previous Citizen of the Year. So it's Leslie Maxwell. She was gutted. So it's not just Aboriginal people, but also supporters of Aboriginal people that find it very hard to get up and celebrate on that day because of the stigma it holds. It was mentioned in the meeting that the citizenship ceremony holds significance on that day. I think that actually devalues every other citizenship ceremony we have during the year, because that's only one. And we have at least 4 here in the chambers, plus individual ones as well. Those people are no less Australian citizens as people that get it on that day. If we had something that was a bit more inclusive, as I said, I've received 5 awards myself. The first 4 I got away from that day. I was able to get up and celebrate it. The last one I got was on that day. I cried before, I cried afterwards, and it took shine off it. It was a very different experience for me towards the other awards that I had received from serving the community. So I urge everyone to please rethink. I think that decision actually set us back significantly in inclusiveness and progression. I understand, and there was one thing that Councillor Border said, it's all or nothing. My personal view is we don't do anything on that day, but I don't think as a nation we are there yet. I think that is a decision that needs to be made at the top level and filtered down. And I don't think, unfortunately, we are there yet as a nation. But to put it all back on that day and not give people the opportunity to have choice, we can still have them come up on the stage on that day and honour them. But to take away that chance of have that feeling of contributing to your community the day before, yeah, I saw that as quite heartbreaking myself. Just my opinion and putting it out there.
Yep. Okay. Other councillors?
I don't have a problem with people who if the event's held on the 26th of January, which is fine with me. If a person feels that that's not right for them, I don't have a problem with them saying, "I'll do one, get one on the 25th, one on the 27th," and we honour it. I'll listen to the vendor back. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Yeah, that's in terms of the citizenship.
Any award. If you feel so strongly you don't want to attend a function on a certain day and you'd like it to be in the next day or the day after, so we care for that.
You're referring to the Australia Day Awards.
Any award, be it citizenship or be it an award.
So what you're saying is that we potentially have 2.
No, if required. If required.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been to quite a few. It's always been the 26th until last year.
Mm-hmm.
And what was a bit annoying last year was a lack of attendance by councillors. Every year we've had it on the 26th at the foreshore at Adirond Gardens. You have to excuse my voice. And we've had 90% of the councils at those meetings, at those events. Last year we had it here. There were 2 of us. 2 councils.
I think you'll find you get less and less attendance on that day wherever you have it from multiple sectors.
The other alternative is public consultation.
But yeah, public consultation. But even the events team, they will tell you how hard it was for them to book entertainers and vendors for that day. More and more people are in support of what that day represents.
That's why it should be public consultation.
Yeah, I agree.
Because I've not heard what you've heard. To be honest. From anybody. I mean, I'm talking about the events team or from public.
And I see the opposite side of it. I don't know anyone who's not offended by that day.
Other questions or viewpoints?
Just comment then, about the Citizen Award. Over the years, I've had a complete reversal of opinion, possibly since I've been mayor. I mean, back in the early days, we would create events to rent a crowd to attend award ceremonies, particularly citizenship. But my involvement with citizenship ceremonies since I've been mayor, I would like us to, whether it's on the Australia Day or a different day, I would like that to still stay as a very respectful, intimate, indoor function. Because a lot of those, I look at, if it's outdoors, these days when we've got big crowds, you're battling with the weather, lots of noise, other carry on. But some of those people are so daunted, whether it's in the mayor's office or here, it is daunting for them to stand up in front of a small group to recite their oath. And they get emotional. I see now, whether it's an Australia Day citizenship ceremony, I'm not thinking about the Australia Day part of it. I'm thinking about that group of people, how they feel, how humble they are to be part of it. We have our little intimate sessions here with the Tim Tams and the Lamingtons, group shot outside, group shots here. So I would like to see the citizenship ceremony still be held inside, not outdoors on a stage where it can be very daunting for those people. Because to me, it's about them. It's not about them providing entertainment, even though they're being respected, but that side of it. So whether you want it on the year that we did have it on Australia Day, was it the year before? The citizenship ceremony or at the awards clashed with the function. So that prevented those people to be able to take part. So if we're still going to have the community celebration of Whyalla, we have in recent years changed the emphasis as to community, one country, one Whyalla, one moving forward. If that is still to be held, all right, on the 26th, I won't use the word Australia Day, I would still like to see the actual citizenship ceremony still indoors.
Either here or the day before, whatever.
Yeah.
In a small scale, yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And I guess if you're talking about awards that are named after Australia Day, they should probably be presented at the community ceremony. And I agree with what's said. I would have always said whatever decision, because I don't come into the decision, it's you guys, is made, that has to be consulted with the community. I've never believed it's up to a CEO or a small administration plus a group of elected members to decide if it's going to be changed. Well, we'll change it. I think that then it certainly has to go back to the community.
Yeah. So I believe a bit with Tammy there, the fact if the 26th will be changed, it's a government issue, not a council issue.
Unfortunately, the governments don't want to make that decision, and it's been left to individual councils.
We'll get there. Just not yet. I don't think as a nation we're ready yet, but we are getting more and more progressive, and our younger generation are definitely a bit more open to change.
So I'd be interested in hearing more from elected members.
If you're asking my opinion, we do the citizenship awards on the night before. I don't, in the Australian Day Awards, what do you call it, should be given out on Australia Day until the federal government change it. I mean, it's as simple as that. It shouldn't be up to us to be changed. Things like Tammy said, it's got to come from further up the tree. If you burn an award, a community service award, it should be presented on that day. But there's, like Tammy said, the citizenship ceremony, I mean, I haven't been there the last couple of years, I'm always away on holidays, but everybody tells me the night before, there's an opportunity for families and people to come, do it respectfully with their families, get the photographs taken. Then the citizenship, the awards that we give out, the community awards get given out on Australia Day, and just, I know it's not probably ideal, but until federal something changes, it shouldn't be for us to be, unless you're going to go to the community and ask what the community want.
Yeah. Other views?
I think it's a pretty decisive type of thing. Public consultation does sound like a good idea. I mean, I have the utmost respect for First Nations people and their culture and their feelings and stuff like that. But I still believe that the 26th kind of represents the birth of modern Australia. One that's inclusive, doesn't matter with your colour, race, creed, religion, sexual orientation, or whatever. So it's a balancing act.
And just from and I get what you're saying, but from an Aboriginal perspective, that is not when Australia actually became Australia. It was when New Holland was invaded.
Yeah, that's just my.
Absolutely, but to us, Australia became Australia, and we love what Australia Day represents. Just not on that day, but Australia didn't become Australia until we had a constitution, and things have changed and progressed. That, you know, you probably heard it. That is Invasion Day for a lot of people, or Survival Day. So it has a huge stigma to it, and yeah, I like I said, until it goes to a federal level, I know that there's not going to be a massive change. But yeah, I look forward to the day where we can all celebrate guilt-free one day.
Out of curiosity, and I ask this completely naively, is there a view within the First Nations people what day Australia Day should be celebrated on?
Yeah, well, there actually used to be a couple of other days that was known as Australia Day. It only became a national holiday in '94. So before that, there was actually a couple of days in May and June, which coincided with the Constitution and a few other regulations. So, yeah, the view is put it back to one of those.
Have you guys, I don't mean you guys, I mean, yeah, have you as a group put that idea to the government? I mean, ultimately, they make the rules, but they've chosen the 26.
No, it hasn't gone that far because we feel, I mean, this year's NAIDOC week said it beautifully, you know, black, loud and proud. We feel like we are just getting a voice now and we are able to speak up. Our ancestors never had that opportunity. We are pushing each other to become leaders and talk up and step up.
Yeah, but, okay,
but we haven't got that far yet.
But you have organisations that look after the Indigenous people. They can speak on your behalf. They've been there for years.
Yep.
Why have they spoken up?
It's getting there. It's getting there. This state has just got the voice up and going. That's one of the first things on their agenda. It will be getting pushed. We're just getting there.
Okay. Peter?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. So I feel like I'm going to cop a bit of heat for this, for what I did say, Tammy, and I'm obviously in connection with Leslie. I haven't heard from her. And I really hope that what I've said hasn't upset her. I imagine that it has, but that's not my intention. And I wrote down what I said because I wanted to say it and deliver it. And I'm happy to sit with somebody and talk through where I was coming from. I mean, hopefully I outlined that clearly enough. That question that Justin just asked is something that I've been wanting to ask for a very long time. You just beat me to it. If not the 26th, then what day?
Yeah.
Because we all hear, let's change the date, let's change the date. But that's kind of half the question or half the answer. Okay. And personally, so that everyone can hear this, I do not mind what date Australia Day is. I just want to know, when can I be happy? And like you said, without shame, without guilt, when do I celebrate going, oh, I love living in Australia. That's not marred with, actually, your ancestors came here and invaded. And I just want to pick up on something that we may have to agree to disagree on. But when I look back at other countries and what invasion was, I'm no history buff from those countries or from Australia, but I just feel like I don't think that was the vibe that was carried here to Australia. And so when it's called Invasion Day, it's like nails down the chalkboard. I'm like, what? I think we've got to define what an invasion is. What is a pioneering spirit? You know, what is settlement? What are these things? What is it to be a, dare I say it, a racist? I don't even know these days. All I know is people are going to hear that video and go, he's a racist.
No, I don't think it's going to be seen like that.
I sincerely hope not.
But there is a difference between discovery
Mhm.
and trying to wipe out a race,
Mhm.
that is what happened. People were walked off cliffs. They were shot. They were raped.
That wasn't the 26th.
It started on the
No, the
26th.
26th is whatever the 26th. Show me your history. Whatever the 26th of January in
Captain Cook
1798, whatever it was.
came to hit the shores
Whereabouts?
in Sydney Cove.
And what did they do?
Started the massacre and the takeout of the race.
Didn't happen that day at all.
That's when it
That's the
started.
day they landed in
Yes.
Botany Bay. It's what's called Botany Bay now.
Yep.
That anything that happened from there happened months and years later.
It continued.
But, yeah, that's
as it
history.
started.
Can I just, and I think that probably emphasizes the point that whatever day it is, I don't personally feel reassured that in May or in April that that's going to be any different.
Oh, absolutely. I can guarantee you it would be.
Well, if I had that
live
assurance,
for the
I'd
day
vote for a change
Where
right
we
now.
could celebrate together. We'd live for that day because what Australia Day actually represents in a whole is beautiful. We are celebrating a country that we are all proud of.
But Tammy, wouldn't you still be upset that Australia was invaded? Like whether it's represented on the 26th of January or another day during the year, Australia was still invaded based on what? And I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but exactly what you're saying. Like Australia, they got off the ships and they started shooting. And Australia was invaded.
You will hear change the date. It's not the day, it's the date.
What difference does that make? What's the difference that you're talking about?
Because you're celebrating a massacre. We wouldn't ask Jewish people to celebrate the day when the gas chambers started or
I'm not sure how that's. Yeah, so change the date is different from change the day.
yes, it's still having a celebration to celebrate our country.
Mhm.
That is not what Aboriginal people are against. It is celebrating on that day.
Okay.
Okay. We, Brum?
So, couple of things. When I received my Australian citizenship, I opted to have it in chambers because I didn't want to be part of what I considered to be the three-ring circus on the stage down at the foreshore, however many years ago it was. That was my choice. And I believe at the time there was a citizenship ceremony with, quite a short time before the actual Australia Day events. I feel like the Australian citizenship should occur on either on a different day or at least in a different place, whether they, like someone said, do that the night before and then they have the opportunity to celebrate if they want to. I've got lots of Aboriginal friends and I've got probably equally as many Aboriginal friends who don't have an issue with the 26th of January as I do who do have an issue with the 26th of January. I don't think that's something that I can decide about. I also feel like the awards ceremonies, if they're going to be Australia Day awards, then they need to be held on Australia Day. So the citizenship ceremony, I can see what you're saying, Phil, about the possibility of it being held at a different time, and then an opportunity if people want to celebrate on that day, they can go wherever with their family and celebrate the fact that they're now Australians on Australia Day at the foreshore at the Whyalla Gardens. So my opinion would be that we would have the Australia Day awards on Australia Day and the citizenship ceremony on a day or two before.
Can I just check in, not entering the debate with Gail? with the Australian, either Gail or Gail, I'm hoping one of you can answer this question. The federal government, Australian government, have changed the protocols to allow for citizenship ceremonies and Australia Day awards, or is it just citizenship ceremonies? I think it's both.
I think it was both 3 days before or
Yeah.
3 days.
So,
In that case, I would opt to have it before or
yeah,
after.
so for everyone's benefit, and talking about potential change over time and not doing the big bang, the Australian government has already recognised that there needs to be some flexibility in terms of the timing. So a couple of comments about citizenship awards should be issued on Australia Day. I don't think that's the case now.
Yeah.
We've got that flexibility as per the federal government
Well, if
protocol.
that's the case, I would prefer to have both on a different day. And as far as public consultation, I think you would get exactly the same as what we're getting in the chambers now. There's two very distinct cohorts of people. Those who think leave it alone, where all Australians get on with it, and then those who think Australia Day is not about celebration. I'm not sure that there would be any value in going to a public poll about whether we have citizenship and awards on a different day. I think the whole thing would be that the debate for me would be about whether we had a celebration on that day.
And I think it would very quickly get into what we were just witnessing of, well, what about the history of this and what about the history of that?
Yeah.
And I've got no clue what I'm talking about, and I doubt the person I'm talking to would have much more clue anyway. But I think the whole idea of moving forward, which we all want, is the challenge that I had, and I guess getting back to my comment, which maybe I shouldn't have said it. I mean no offence by it in any case, but the practicalities of moving the whole lot versus not moving anything. As I mentioned, the citizenship ceremony, I'm still challenged with, okay, if we shift it to the day before, I really don't mind when it is, as long as it's legal. But then the question of, okay, good, I'm glad it's moved because now there's more respect and more value.
Can I just stop you there for a minute? The citizenship thing has never been an issue on the 24th of the 26th. That's always been whenever council runs. It's never been a hard fast 26th.
Okay.
Because we've had citizenship awards. How many times this year? How many times have you been?
At least
Four.
Yeah. So we
haven't where we want.
Yep. So we definitely have them.
Always have. Yeah.
That's right.
It's the awards I'm more concerned about. The awards on Australia Day. The Australia Day award is the award for Australia Day. That's my argument.
Yeah.
Not citizenship.
Yeah.
Continue. Sorry.
No, and I think, well, on that note, and that
But
gets me
for
to
me,
one
if the
point.
legislation, if the government's changed the rules that you can have your Australian citizenship awards a couple of days before or a couple of days after, whatever the change says, then I have no issue with it. If it keeps a particular cohort happy to do it that way, then I've got no issue with it. Because I don't think that if I was going to get an Australia Day citizenship award, an Australia Day award, I don't think I'd be pissed off that I got it the day before. I'd be just cheerful that I got it. It wouldn't matter to me what day I received it on. But if they said, well, you can have it on this day and you're not going to upset anybody, or you can have it on that day and potentially you will upset someone, I'd say, look, just give it to me on the day before or a couple of days before, because, yeah.
So on that note, and what I was going to say before, I hear your point. I hear Tammy's point. I hear Bill's point. Okay, so I feel better if I'm Indigenous because now you're not accepting it on the date. So we're going to do it on the 25th. You're going to get the award, but we're still celebrating for 4 hours on the 26th, and that's what I'm thinking.
By
It
choice.
doesn't make sense to me.
By choice.
You've got a choice
Yeah.
If
whether
I
you
get
go
my
or not.
Australia Day, if I get my Australia Day award the day before or 2 days before, and I don't want to be part of the Australia Day celebrations, I don't have to be. Whereas if the awards are on Australia Day, if I want to accept that award in public, I have to go on that day,
But
no
if
matter
we're
how
going
I
to give the
feel about it.
awards, no awards on Australia, there's no point having an Australia Day celebration.
Or calling them Australia Day award seems.
Why? There's going to be nothing done.
Karen,
with that.
if you get awarded as Australian Below Citizen of the Year, you can say, I want it 25th. We do it at 25th. What was that?
Yeah, for me, that's fraught with I mean, you're going to have to organise one ceremony for those who do, one ceremony for those who don't. That's just my opinion. My opinion is you do both on a different day. And Australia Day is not about the awards. Australia Day is not about the citizenship. Australia Day is about celebrating
awards to be awarded for you.
Well, I don't believe it is. I believe Australia Day is about celebrating, you know, everything about being Australian, the Anzacs and the mateship and the community and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's two completely different days.
So we went away from calling it an Australia Day celebration. We kind of branded it as a community celebration to probably celebrate all things about Australia. So it's not that we're calling it an Australia Day picnic anymore. Like we used to do that, but it's more like a community day now. And I know I'm sitting over this side table. I do want to just share a couple of things. So I do know at least 5 people had won Citizen of the Year and felt very uncomfortable about accepting it on the day. So it's just, I'm not to add into the argument because there is for and against. But I also am worried if we go out to public consultation, if that's where we go, we have to be so careful because I don't know if you've noticed the shift at the moment towards marginalised people. You know, you look at our celebration for, you know, for our LGBTQI plus community, that all over Australia has blown up. Minority groups are being hung out to dry at the moment, and so strongly that we received several calls from our posts that supported our diverse workplace community that said, hey, Whyalla, are you doing okay? Here's some ways you can have conversations with your community about being inclusive and being diverse and all that sort of thing. So it's not just, you know, our gender diverse community or our, you know, our orientation diverse community. It is actually all minority groups actually copping a lot of flack at the moment.
And I feel like if we went out to public consultation, there's going to be
that's a massive,
very, very different kinds of thoughts. You get on with it, get over it.
That's right. I don't think we.
And then the other people who go, yeah, we should be, and then whichever decision we make, I feel it's going to completely turn people against the other group. If we decide not to have it because that's what the majority of people have said about citizenship, I feel like then it'll be all the, you know, we've made a decision to keep these people happy. It won't be about the fact that we've consulted openly and we've gone with, you know, the majority. I feel like the whichever way we go will be almost like a witch hunt for the other team, if you like. That's why I would be really reluctant.
If we went back to previous years where we had it the day before, but still have the option for those who want to, and we've done this in the past. People have come with their families, they've had their moment in the spotlight, and then at the celebration on the 26th, you still have an opportunity, if you choose, to get up in front of your community and get your applause. That is a compromise that will keep everybody happy and every scenario covered.
You think?
It would.
Yeah, you think.
Yeah.
I know people don't think. I know people critical of last year.
Yeah.
I'm saying people were critical last year that we changed it. So there's going to be two sides to every other time.
Yeah. So if we try to go back one step to potentially the why and part of, you know, why we're having this conversation, I'm going to place the question: are we having this conversation because we want more people to come and attend the citizenship ceremony and the awards? Is that why we're having this conversation? And there's a view that we're going to get more people to the formal event if it's done either on the same day or a different day. Is that one of the drivers for this conversation?
Personally, I don't think so. Personally, I think there's 2 different issues. One is the practical and logistical element, which I would suggest could be accommodated on the day. And the other one is a nationwide issue, which is at play. Like it underpins everything that each person is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very awkward thing to talk about because it's safe for the minority groups. Well, it used to be. I mean, whether that's shifted or not. But I mean, to be a member of male, heterosexual, white, family-based things like that's the minority. Like I can't come out and say, I'm so proud of this, I'm so proud of that. Like it's just not done. You're a wanker for doing that. And that's a really scary place to live, by the way. And so when I'm saying what I'm saying at the meeting, that's how I feel. And I try to speak to as many people as I can. I've spoken to people who are getting their citizenship ceremony that would completely disagree with some of the things that have been said in this room about it makes no difference whether they, and it devalues the other citizenship ceremonies. I just don't see that they've been the case. And so I really just want to encourage us all to do everything we can from all our different backgrounds to create a safe space for discussion about something like this, where my character is not going to be assassinated because I was the one that said something, or that Bill's not going to be seen as being, just the old guy that says this stuff, because that's the risk, and that's the risk that I know that minority groups have been facing for a long time. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. So I guess, and correct me if I've got that or I haven't read the room. But to answer your question, Justin, yeah, I don't think it's a matter of logistics. I think we can accommodate it wherever we choose to accommodate it. But the question we're debating is where should it be? And we're debating a question at a local level. But as Mark said, this is a federal government thing. Going to community consultation, we're a waste of our community's money. And it's just going to flare it up. It's just going to amplify what's happening.
I don't think it really matters what opinion you've got. You're going to get sorted by somebody. Depends on what you do. Whether you go one way, you're going to get flogged. You go the other way, you're going to get flogged. You're going to get derided. It doesn't matter what you do or what you say. You're going to get derided.
I don't think we got any flogging before, when it used to be.
But social media's changed that landscape. Minority. There's just so much with that.
And I feel like we're trying to make the decision, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like, you said, are we making the decision to try and get more people to the ceremony? I feel like I'm trying to make the decision that will be least, I'm going to say least hurtful or least
More respectful and inclusive.
Most respectful, or that's where my headset is. It's not about how many people rock up. It's about.
Can I just say, sorry, Tammy. So when you say more respectful, I guess that's what I was trying to argue the ball in what I said. I don't see how moving a citizenship ceremony shows any more respect to the Indigenous culture. I just don't see it. I see if you were to shift the whole day or date, and I'm not sure which one is the most appropriate to use. I really mean it. I'm more open to that. That makes more sense to me, because then we can all get together. Wicked. Let's have Australia Day awards. Coincidentally on Australia Day.
Yeah.
Let's welcome new citizens to Australia on Australia Day. Yes, it's the only time they can do it here because there's only one Australia Day a year.
So if we all agree that the prevailing being that we should have at the top of our decision-making tree and back to the Whyalla's councillor's oath, which is to be progressive and enable everyone within our community, the highest order priority to me sounds like inclusivity. Inclusivity means the ability for people to choose to participate, or if they don't want to participate, they don't have to.
Correct.
The best solution then in terms of inclusivity, if the highest order is inclusivity, is that we should separate the two out and have the other one event on something that's other than the 26th, because then people who want to participate in the awards and the citizenship can do so. Those people can also potentially participate in the community event on the 26th if they want to. So they've got the choice. The majority of the community can also equally attend those awards and citizenship ceremony and the community event. So in terms of inclusivity, that has to be the best solution in terms of giving people the options about whether they choose to participate or not.
That's how I feel about it. But
I'm just trying to summarise where we're going as a collective. Because yeah, absolutely. You don't have to apologise.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just going on past years, having that separate ceremony for citizenship and awards, and then they can go and attend the community event. The people in the room that have come to witness the indoor event, they're the people that want to be there and witness their families and friends together. They love that intimate setting.
they're all in the room for a reason. They're not just walking past outside. And the feedback I've got is that everyone has loved this intimate, separate ceremonies. They really appreciate it.
You feel the pride and the love in the room.
Well, as I said, Michelle, that was
Very
my
respectful.
choice was to have it at the council chambers, not at the Ada Ryan Gardens, because I didn't want to be part of a 3-ring circus was how, and it wasn't until I got home after the meeting the other night that I said to my husband about citizenship, and he said, well, you didn't want to go to the Ada Ryan Gardens for yours because you didn't want to be part of the 3. And I thought, actually, that's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
I just wanted my
Yeah.
husband and my kids to watch, and that was it.
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone's sort of speak in favour of going back to an outdoor event for the formal elements, which is the citizenship awards and the citizenship. So I think we're at least all on the same page in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
The question just now is,
The date.
do we do them all on the same day or we split them? From what I'm hearing, the prevailing view is that we should be inclusive and give people the option to, either opt in or opt out. And the only way we can do that is to split the two and have the formalities on a different day other than the 26th.
I don't agree. Yeah, at all. I feel like that's not reading the room. I think we're completely not at that place. Some of us are. And I don't mean to be rude or abrupt. That just kind of blurted out.
So how
12 till 4 p.m. community celebration, 5:30 ceremony, citizenship ceremony and awards presentation.
Yeah. But
I don't know how that couldn't work.
But if I respond to you, part of this discussion that we just had is that some people don't want to participate in activities on the 26th.
Mm-hmm.
So why would you hold things on a day that some people don't want to participate? Why would you not put something on a different day where they want to participate, they can choose to do so?
And offer
So
choice.
if you start with inclusivity as your primary driver and back to the community oath that we want to be open and available and progress all people in our community, those people who don't want to celebrate in any shape or form on the 26th, why would you only put an event on that day and effectively exclude them from participating?
I've got a couple of points to respond to that. So the first one would be, as I mentioned on the night, on a case-by-case basis, if someone doesn't want to be a part of the day because it's a day of warning for them, and I am fully respectful of that, then we make it on a case-by-case basis, flipping around a bit. So saying, because you could say the same thing to the person who's really keen to get their Australia Day award on Australia Day. Well, why can't I get mine on Australia Day? Why do I have to do it on the 25th? And that'll have different reasons for those things. Connecting the Australia Day awards and the citizenship ceremony, I think they're two very different things. And I think it's, as much as I suggest, practically speaking, the community event during the day and the ceremony at the evening, either on the same day or the night before, ultimately, I'm not too fussed, but it just doesn't, I'm still yet to hear an argument that makes sense in my tiny little brain. It's a citizenship ceremony. I'm not sure how changing the date of that is showing any more respect or value to Indigenous culture. I would like to learn how it does. As separate to the Australia Day Awards. So imagine if it was just a citizenship ceremony. Does that affect Indigenous people at all? I'm thinking that doesn't.
Well,
but I'm happy to
it's
speak
been
quite
quite clearly pointed out that many in the Indigenous community do have an issue with that.
With a citizenship ceremony, so new people coming to Australia and being celebrated into our community on the day designated federally as Australia Day, that is offensive.
I personally wouldn't accept an Australian. I personally wouldn't have my citizenship on Australia Day.
And I respect that you personally
And that's because
if I say I've heard from
how I feel about the whole situation. Ideally for me it'd be on a different day, like 4 months later or something. So I don't even have to think about it. But me personally, I wouldn't. So there must be other people who feel like that.
And I agree. And then I think it depends on what we put the weight into. And like I said, I'm open to all options, but I'm just looking for something that I can hang my hat on when someone inevitably quizzes me and says, how could you have gone along with that or whatever it might be. I've spoken to people who are getting their citizenship and wondering what all the fuss is about. Why wouldn't it be on Australia Day? You're welcoming us to your country, but you're not proud enough to do it on that day. And this is where I get back to my final comment on the on Monday night of either move the whole lot or don't move it at all. Moving the whole lot to the April or May date or whatever other day it would be, and having it all on the same day, I would much prefer that. But that is a federal decision to make.
So it's a choice between, choice between, really, for me, what you have control over, which is the Australian citizenship ceremony and the awards, and what you have no control over, which is Australia Day.
Yeah.
So for me, we change what we can control, and at such time as we get we get a different day allocated for Australia Day, then we take, you know what I mean? It's about, we as a council can control that part of it, but we can't control the whole day. So that's, you know, what you're saying, why wouldn't you shift the whole lot or nothing? If that's not within our control, we can't do that. We can't say, well, Whyalla's having Australia Day on the, I don't know, 1st of February, and everybody else across the country still having it. But we can say we are going to have our ceremonies on a different day.
We can't do too much tonight because we got 3 of our elected members aren't here to have this conversation. So
And tonight's not a
It's
decision
not
to make it
really
forward.
not a dance.
Can I just ask something that just seems really obvious to me, and it might be that I just haven't got something. Is that if we're contemplating having the Australia Day ceremony, the Australia Day events, that's what I can call it, an event, and some people wish to have their citizenship or their award given to them on that day, and some don't, and some people do prefer, for various different reasons, to have their citizenship or their award given to them on a different day. Can we not have, you know, say that this is going to be our ceremony day, the day before or 2 days before or something, but should you wish to have your award or citizenship on the day, then you can do that too?
Well,
Can I just throw a spanner in the works?
Sorry,
But then
I just,
had
I get
Shell
that.
whispering in my ear
yeah,
that there are
Of course.
evidently changes afoot that we won't be doing individuals.
okay. That answers my question, because Tammy,
That's an
individual
realised that,
awards.
that satisfies.
If we've got a choice, we're covering every base.
Yeah.
Oh,
With
for
Must be more
citizenship.
change.
That's citizenship, not
And
award.
Yeah, citizenship.
and my
But the
only thing
have to be on the day.
is that not
Citizenship.
you'll explain that again,
The
Phil?
citizenship, Michelle said, Kathy.
So we can't do private one-on-one ceremony, citizenship ceremonies
Yeah.
anymore. They won't do it.
Yeah.
So it had to be that 4
Has to be
times
approved.
a year, the individual dates that we choose, which we're doing 4 times. But if the individuals want a private, personal one-on-one ceremony, they need to speak with the Adelaide office and have a lot of good reasons. They're tough on it.
Oh, so they get four dates to choose from. If they want it outside those 4 dates, they've got to apply.
Yeah,
I'd
they have
say
to
that
speak to the Department of Home
If your
Affairs.
reason was that you were a First Nation person or somebody who supported First Nations and you didn't want to receive it on that day, I think it's a pretty good, the citizenship, I would think it's a pretty good argument to have it, you know, a week before or a week after, or, you know, if we know when we're having them and you know people who are going to be recipients of them, we can give them plenty of notice and choice.
Yeah, that's the government.
Yeah.
You know, do 3 days.
3 days
No,
before.
not if we've set ours, if we've set our to the government set it,
No,
we
we
set
set
it.
the date.
But you've got
We said it.
terminology in terms of citizenships,
Yeah.
ceremonies,
And
and awards.
Yes, I was talking about both of them.
Yeah.
To say that if you didn't, because I don't know the intricacies of receiving an award or getting a citizenship.
Nor will we ever.
Absolutely, that is spot on.
So
So if there is choice for both parties, if we are able to give them a choice for the people, Tammy's nodding and that gives me some comfort.
that's
Yeah.
what Tammy suggested before, which we have done in previous years, is a finding a balance
Option.
between the two, where we do the formal awards on a given day
With
And-
family.
with family and friends,
Intimate.
Yeah.
in the chamber. And then on the 26th, as part of the community celebrations, those that award recipients that are ready, willing and able to come along can be acknowledged in a public forum to say, you know, persons X, Y, and Z have.
It's a respectful
yeah.
compromise.
So they get the ability to stand in front of the community
I know they can't have their,
but they don't
They
get
can't
the
be
actual
given-
allocation of the award because we don't want, to be quite frank, with our financial sustainability challenges, etc. We don't want to be paying for 2 awards
Get it back before.
nights or a celebration award, because that just double ups our
But you
costs.
still get your verbal recognition on
Yeah.
the stage
Yeah.
if you wish.
So, and just to correct you, so if the person who got the citizen didn't want to have it on that night, you would present his award to him on that day and his certificate on the day? If they didn't want to get it the night before?
So you're talking about citizenship or an Australian Day
Citizenship
award?
or an Australian Day award. If they didn't want to, they wanted to receive it on the day,
Yeah.
would we be prepared to give it to them on that day?
So I think the answer is no, because we've changed the language. It's the Whyalla Citizenship
There are some people.
Awards. It's not Australia Day awards. Okay, so we've changed the language. And can I suggest that if someone didn't want to receive an award on the 24th or 25th, because they
wanted
so
it on the
minded
26th.
that they wanted it on the 26th, we would say, if you want your award presented as part of our formal ceremony, it's on the 24th or 25th, whatever day it is.
Yeah.
And we're happy to provide public recognition and opportunity for the community to see you on a stage on the
So I
26th.
think
if
that
that's what
just
you want.
blows the whole thing out of the water when it gets to that. So all in on not it. So
Yeah, but that was the point I was trying to make before.
Yeah, that's
So
what
we're
I
going to have to probably.
because it's going opposite direction, just change them straight back. So the people don't want it on the 24th, 25th, want to get it on the 26th. We're saying you can't have it on the 26th, you got to have it on this day. So that's reversal. So we've got to find a better way, or we don't have any citizenship around the 26th. You just pick 4 dates that aren't anywhere near Australia.
So again, like terminology, the citizenship ceremonies are one thing and the awards are the
Yeah,
second
I'm
thing.
saying there'd be respect to citizenship and the awards. Well, you know,
So
I don't know how you can say to somebody, well, you've deserved the award, but we're not going to give it to you in the day you want to receive it. That's if you're going to play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
If you're going to play devil's advocate, you can't do that.
Yeah, and this is where we get into this.
That's not me, you know,
Because
that's what I've seen. That's what makes
we,
it so
we can
hard.
have, we can have 4 people being awarded recipients and 2 might want to be receive their award on one day and 2 might want to receive their
Well,
award.
3
on
might
another.
want to get on the 25th. You might have one person that sticks the gun and wants on the 26th.
That's right.
So that
we're
makes it mockery of the whole thing.
That's right. So that's why we've got to come to an agreement in terms of what date do we hold it. I'm going to suggest, given the time of day and we, as the point was made, we do have a couple of councillors not here. This conversation makes it clear that some further work is needed. So we either need to have another workshop to inform a report to council. And the question I would then have is, what additional information do you want to have included in that report that's not already before you? Or alternatively, we just bring the matter straight to the council and let the councillors have the discussion and make a decision at the council.
I don't think there's any further information needed. We all know what's going on. I think it's a matter of
Just making that.
Yeah.
unconscious.
And I don't think you can let people choose, you want it this day or that day. Logistically, that's a nightmare.
Mm.
And it also means that you've then got to explain why we're mentioning this person today and not that person.
But in all the years that we did it the day before or the 2 days before, nobody has ever refused to actually receive their award on that day.
Yeah. I was just going to say that.
Nobody has refused to say, no, I'm not accepting it on the 25th.
Yeah.
They've accepted that that's the day the
Yeah,
awards are being
exactly.
presented.
So just a quick straw poll. We're saying that we just bring a report to the next council meeting. You don't need any further information and the council will then need to make a decision in terms of the timing and the venue. I think the venue is pretty clear. It's really just a timing issue. So is that where we've all landed?
Yeah.
All right, so we'll put that on to the next council meeting for a decision to be made at the next council meeting. All right, I've lost track of time. Time is marched on. Sorry, I'm not doing a very good
I've
job.
got to be on the road in the morning. I want to be home well before 9:30.
And on that note,
Seven
say good night.
I can't feel my feet.
Close the meeting.